social impact venture. What's important for us is that they come and do it for the first time. For some of them, and some of these students are in the room, they do it as early as their first year. We actually are now recruiting students to come to Trinity to do entrepreneurship, and then like that other stuff, right? You know, classes and sports and stuff. But it's really exciting that this sort of philosophy of students actively venturing is something that's true. This isn't something that's new for Trinity. For those of you who got the latest Trinity magazine, or it's waiting for you as you get home, it's great to see sort of the great history of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial activity that's been present here at this campus for over 150 years. The way we think about entrepreneurship is it's just like undergraduate research and scholarship, but instead our students are actually building and starting new companies. In the last 8 years, we've launched over 53 companies. 26 of those companies have come through our venture competition, the Sternberg Prize, where we've now injected over $250,000 of early stage capital that's non-dilutive. It's a grant for these students to start their companies. And it really serves as that first kind of friends and family validation for many of these students' business concepts. Many of these companies are still alive today, in part because of our integral summer accelerator program that's really critical to ensure that these students, when they launch their companies and have this cash, actually are going off and building real businesses. And that summer accelerator is our version of undergraduate summer research, where our students get a chance to spend the entire summer with us, working full-time on their companies as they launch their business. And so it's really exciting that all the companies that have been coming out of the summer accelerator, just like other typical accelerators, their failure rate after 1 year is 0. Their failure rate after 2 years is 0. It's really exciting to see them have that 2 years, 3 years of additional kind of runway to be able to build their businesses while they're students. So there's really exciting things happening at Trinity Entrepreneurship. And we're thrilled for your all's engagement and involvement. So I know you all are asking, like, how can I get involved? And Mike Bacon will raise his hand and say, like, write me a check. But beyond that, what I think is also important is that your ability and engagement with us is critical. So on the back of your program is sort of like our portal to have alumni get engaged with our students. It's called trinity.startuptree.co. It's a way for alumni to log on, fill in a profile, and get connected for one-on-one coaching with our student entrepreneurs who are actively working and building their startups with you. There are other programs that we have that we'd love to talk to you about to get you engaged. Obviously, we'd love to have you come on in as guest lecturers, to serve as panels, working with our students. That's super exciting. We have this one-on-one coaching that we have through our Startup Tree platform. We've also just recently launched the Trinity version of the MIT Venture Mentoring Program here on Trinity's campus. And so for that high-level mentoring for people that are actively engaging in building real companies that are based here in San Antonio, that sort of team-based mentoring that we have with our VMS model is another way for alumni to get engaged. And finally, the last 2 ways in which alumni can get engaged, obviously, is through our Entrepreneur in Residence program. It's an opportunity for, we're going to be making a nice announcement about that very soon. It's a way for alumni to come and spend a year with us, an academic year, to be working and engaging with our teams and engaging with these students. We're proud to have this year's Entrepreneur in Residence, Mary, actually, who's here. Say hello, Mary, to everyone. You can say a lot about that experience. We have many other entrepreneurs in residence as well. David's in the room. There's David, Gerald, and of course the founding entrepreneur in residence, one of the founders of Tune, is actually here with us today, Chris Warren. So Chris, it really is your sort of time and talent that's really gone into building this sort of exciting program here at Trinity. And so, like, as you all know, we're getting ready to kick off sort of more fundraising that's happening for the university. And so as you think about your giving towards Trinity, I'm here to assure you that all of your gifts given to Trinity Entrepreneurship have a direct impact on students. And so many of our programs are funded primarily or completely through the generosity of the people in this room. And so on behalf of our students and on the behalf of the university, thank you all so much for your gifts to Trinity Entrepreneurship. We're grateful that you have chosen us to be the stewards of your gift, to help ensure that these students today get an opportunity to build, while they are students, real companies, so that when they go off and leave this place, they can go off and be that change they wish to see in the world. So thank you all so much for that. All right, so Carmen, did I make my cue? Is that good? All right. So I've been asked now to introduce our 2 student teams. Please continue to eat. They're going to be giving you their pitches that they gave during our Snubberg Prize competition. Again, it's our venture competition in a way in which we help launch student ventures. First up, I believe, is, she says, look at the program. First up, we'll be having Luxturn Technologies. Luxturn, please come on.
Good morning.
You got 7 minutes on the clock.
Don't start the clock. The slide isn't working. There we go. Okay, so good morning. My name is Bobby McGee, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Luxturn Technologies. During this pitch, I will show you all why Luxturn Technologies is ready to innovate the motorcycle industry and ultimately save lives. I'm sure that some of you are motorcyclists, and I'm sure that some of you might not like motorcyclists, especially that 20-year-old kid that goes flying past you on the highway during the middle of 5 o'clock traffic on 281. But the fact of the matter is that motorcycle safety is a legitimate issue that Luxturn Technologies has set out to help solve. I'm a motorcyclist, and my fellow riders are dying on the roads every single day. In 2017, 5,172 motorcyclists died on the roads due to an accident with a car. That's 5,172 lives lost and families permanently altered. As a motorcyclist, I can testify that the scariest part about riding a motorcycle is the other people on the road with you. I'm constantly worried that someone might be on their phone and might not see me, and that mistake will cost me my life. Furthermore, current motorcycle safety equipment is great for protecting a motorcyclist once an accident has happened. However, it does little to prevent an accident from happening in the first place. This gap is where Luxturn Technologies will fit into the $8 billion a year motorcycle accessory market. What we have done is we have developed projecting signals for motorcycles. I want to stress this. No one has ever invented a projecting signal before. And thus we've capitalized on our own innovation and are currently patent pending. First off, we have our projecting turn signal product, which projects out a flashing 5 foot by 5 foot amber equilateral triangle onto the road itself to further increase the visibility of a motorcyclist's turn signal. Next up, we have our projecting brake signal product, which projects out a solid 5 foot by 2 foot red rectangle behind the motorcyclist to further increase their visibility. And finally, we have our ultimate light package, which includes one of both of our products. I've had all of our products on my own motorcycle for the past 2.5, 3 months. We aren't pitching an idea, we're pitching a patent-pending, fully developed product line that is ready for manufacturing. In terms of competition, our main competitors are companies like Kurakin and Custom Dynamics. These companies sell really cool-looking aftermarket LED signals for motorcycles, and they're normally between $150 and $200. Next up, we have companies like Rage Cycles and Baja Designs that sell direct replacement signals. So if yours break, you can get your exact same ones from them for normally between $80 and $100. However, we are not a replacement signal. We're an aftermarket add-on for motorcyclists. We are 100% plug and play, so the end user doesn't have to splice any wires or take it to a professional to have our product installed. Our products are 100% anglable, so the end user can adjust out exactly where they want the image to be projected. Furthermore, our products have interchangeable image slide lenses so that they will project out whatever shape or image the end user wants them to have. In terms of our target customer, it's not really a secret. It's the motorcyclist. Through our interviews, we discovered 2 main types of riders that both love our product. First up, your stereotypical older motorcyclist that works a 9 to 5 but loves riding, absolutely loves our product just for the safety benefits that our product provides. On the other hand, we have the younger motorcyclist, the kid that goes flying past you on 281, who normally doesn't take a whole lot of safety precautions when he rides, but this rider loves our product strictly for the visual appeal that projecting signals provide. Furthermore, we will also target the family members of motorcyclists, as motorcyclist family members go through and experience the same stresses of riding that motorcyclists do, even though they don't ride themselves. Through our interviews, these family members told us that they would purchase our product and gift it to their loved one that does ride. And our customer discovery data is exciting, but I want to share with you 2 testimonials. Up top, we have Trevor Sharp, who's a senior at Stephen F. Austin University. Trevor has said that having our products on his bike would make his commute much safer, and that's why he's excited to have pre-ordered our products. Next up, we have Colin Riley from the motorcycle shop, which is out on Austin Highway. He has said that our technology is the future of the motorcycle industry, and that's why they're ecstatic to carry our products in their store in the future. Now, of the total $25,000 of funding we've received to date, we've only used $1,500 of it. With that $1,500, we were able to go through and fully develop the functional prototypes that are on my motorcycle, and then filed a provisional patent on our invention. We went through and did 2 separate patent searches before we filed that application, so our IP is very sound. Additionally, we also went through and acquired over $22,000 in pre-orders in B2B and B2C markets. Then we went through and developed a similar version of our product and sold it to a local San Antonio manufacturer called PSI because they wanted our safety equipment protecting their employees each and every day. Currently, we have over 247 units pre-ordered, and for our first round of inventory, our minimum goal of sales is 500 units. When we hit that mark, we'll have enough continual working capital to go through and pay for the full patent while continuing production. In terms of manufacturing, our only fixed cost of equipment is a little over $3,800. From there, our variable costs and everything work out so our margins are above 70% and increase upwards to 85% at scale. For marketing, motorcyclists really interact heavily on social media pages, and we can run a targeted multi-tiered run on these social media pages for motorcyclists that would cost a total of $335 and reach over 2.5 million motorcyclists. Once we have sold through that first round of inventory, we really have 2 options. The first one is a licensing deal. At this point, we will already have the filed full patent, solidified proof of concept, and manufacturing instructions. And at this point, we could license it out directly to a motorcycle manufacturer or another motorcycle accessory company. Or we can just continue manufacturing and scale up production. Now, I'm Bobby McGee. I'm a finance major, economics minor here at Trinity. I'm in the class of 2021. I have experience in finance through an internship at Dell. And then I'm also a motorcyclist. My co-founder and CFO is Chris Stewart. He is a junior here at Trinity, raised by entrepreneurs, and has been a fantastic help with me on this. We also have an incredible group of mentors that has provided invaluable help to date and will continue to help us as we proceed forward. Thank you guys so much for listening. And am I supposed to open it up to questions now?
The questions at the end after chicken.
There we go.
Hello, I'm Chicken McEvey, CEO of StorySpread. StorySpread has one mission: to empower young creatives through a storytelling education. We at StorySpread provide workshops and subscription services that provide children with a creative outlet while improving their reading and writing skills. With that being said, let me introduce you to Yesenia. Yesenia is a young 8-year-old girl located here in San Antonio that recently lost her mother. Yesenia is located in one of the most underperforming zip codes in the United States, which is here in San Antonio. SAU is a nonprofit organization that provides workshops and after-school activities to students like Yesenia. Yesenia attended our workshops over the summer, and she was able to create a story called Tommy the Monkey. Tommy the Monkey is a story about a young monkey who hangs out with his friends, goes to his treehouse, and attends his mother's funeral. Through our workshop, Yesenia demonstrated key reading and writing skills, provided herself with a creative outlet, and also grieved the loss of her mother. The problems we are experiencing in education that StorySpread plans to help other educators with is 1, the need to improve reading and writing skills in our children, provide these children with creative outlets while preparing them for their next state exams using standards like TEKS. StorySpread helps students demonstrate mastery of key reading and writing skills, provides them with a software based on storytelling fundamentals, and our workshops are one-on-one and aligned with state standards. How did Yesenia create her comic book? First, she logged into our website. She chooses from a preset or creates her own layout by changing the columns or rows. Next, she adds her character, adds text, adds scenes and backgrounds, and then downloads and shares with her friends. StorySpread operates in two markets, workshops and software. The workshop market is highly localized, and usually these creative writing workshops follow a basic writing curriculum that are not aligned with TEAS. Our software is very unique. We only found one software company that was similar to ours, and they're located in Canada. However, they use an outdated framework called Adobe Flash, which is set to be discontinued in 2020. StorySpread has a fresh curriculum based on storytelling fundamentals, and our software uses the latest technologies. Our customers are school districts, which are large organizations and therefore a longer sales funnel. But we also provide workshops to educational nonprofits that look to host workshops all year round. All workshops are 1 to 2 hours long, and they grant temporary access to our storybuilder software, so students are able to create a comic book in our workshop and download and share with their friends. Next, we provide access codes to our subscription software, where students are able to grant unlimited access to our software, have unlimited downloads, and able to share with their friends and families. The team is me, Chicken My eBay, and Ren Ramos, who acts as our CMO. And over the summer, StorySpread created 222 pre-join assets. We created our story building software and provided job opportunities to over 6 training students. StorySpread is here to help local educators and students like Yesenia provide themselves with creative outlets while improving their education. Thank you.
I think there's some time for questions for both teams, so if we can have Chicken stay up here, and then Chris. Carmen, how much time have we got for Q&A? She stepped out.
8 minutes.
8 minutes. We have 8 minutes for Q&A. So feel free.
We might not even, okay, never mind. I was gonna say, we might not need all 8 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question that, what kind of educational background do you guys have, and how does the curriculum fit in? And have you worked with teachers, and do they feel like this is something that is helpful?
We worked closely with the education department here at Trinity, asking for their feedback on our software. We asked them what teachers or what children and students and also educators are struggling with right now.
In terms of building educational software for somebody that's obviously much younger, usability is super important. So what is kind of the unique differentiator in terms of user experience for your software?
For us, we hired a Trinity alumni, so thank you for that. She graduated in 2019, and she's currently working. She currently has experience with 2 different startups. So we were able to ask her what our students looking for. We also had over 2 focus groups to get students involved in our software, see how they're interacting with it, see what they're looking for, and see what their struggle points are, able to redesign and tweak the software for that.
Bobby, I've got 2 questions. One is, how did you come up with your name? And secondly, I wanted to know, what's the total cost of getting to a patent?
Okay.
And the time frame.
So the provisional patent cost us $1,500 to date, final cost. The full patent will cost us between $13,000 and $20,000, depending on how much time our legal team actually has to go through and argue with the patent office about our claims. So that's the ballpark cost for that front. And then how did we get the name? So we were Project Tech, and that's what we pitched as last spring. But then we wanted to make sure that we could have a name that we could copyright and trademark. And so my partner, some of our friends and I, we went to Starbucks right over there on Broadway and sat there for a good 5 hours, brainstorming different names, then checking to see if they were all already copyrighted, trademarked, or if their domain name was even available. So it was it's not a fun process. Yes, sir.
So other than the one product, or how can you apply this one product to other types of transportation or other fields, and then what other products do you have on board for your company?
Yes, sir. So we currently have these two products, which are pretty unique for motorcycles just because of how we actually integrate into the power system. Although the concept of our technology can be applied over to lots of different industries. One of the industries that we are most excited about is actually in the manufacturing industry. Over in Europe right now, they're beginning to mandate this type of technology. They're beginning to require that our type of technology is on forklifts and other kind of manufacturing equipment over across all of Europe. So that's an industry that we see being very valuable to us in the future, and we'd like to get into that eventually.
What about bicycles?
So there's currently similar technology for bicycles in terms of there's tech that goes out and projects out kind of laying around the bicycle and everything like that. And that's an industry that we will also branch out to once we get to scale. Yes, sir.
Have you found any auto manufacturers that might be interested?
So we have not looked at that significantly right now. Going through and in the actual automotive industry, we are working through and have several design concepts of how we can branch out into that industry. But that's a very costly operation for us to get into, so that's something that we want to do down the road.
Are you scheduled to be on a Shark Tank anytime soon?
You know, I would love to. I got started being interested in entrepreneurship and everything because my freshman year of high school, I was taking an Excel class, and every Friday was Shark Tank Friday, where our teacher would bring popcorn and we'd turn the lights off and watch Shark Tank. So that's on the bucket list. We'll see. Any other questions?
All right, please join me in thanking our two students. Isn't that cool? Wasn't that awesome? Don't you wish that was here when you were a student? That's so cool. So I'm going to turn this over to David Doggett for the remainder of our program. David, take it away.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the participants for volunteering, and thank you to our students. It's great to see you. Sheridan Chambers is our moderator. He's the founder of Denim Group, which is a software development security company here in San Antonio. Also, I want to thank Rebecca Creek Distillery. Steve Ryan is one of the owners of Rebecca Creek, and he's the one who donated all of our liquor today. And he would be here today, but he has an off-site company event, so I do want to thank Rebecca Creek. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sharon.
Let's maybe get our panelists up. I don't think anyone can hear this me. I do want to introduce, obviously the full bios for everybody is in the your little pamphlets that you got. But I do want to introduce everybody to you guys and kind of give some highlights or some interesting things. First is Chris Granberry. Chris holds a BS in Business Administration for Trinity, class of '89, as well as an MBA in Finance from SMU. Are you a big SMU fan? Did you come back last night? Really good. And it has a series of successful exits, especially Alert Logic, which is a vendor of ours, so I'm familiar with your product in the sense that we've used it. And currently resides in Houston as the CFO of Macro. Jeff McLaren, also class of '89, founded MedAction, which is electronic health records and information services for the anesthesia market. Previously, he served as a co-founder and CEO of Safer Sleep, founder of Anesthesia Safety and Record Automation Services in New Zealand and the UK. In the US. Okay, so that'd be good. Next is Yusuf Kassim, class of '08, and also St. Mary's Law School. Yusuf is co-founder and CEO of Easy Expunctions, the only software-driven services company that specializes in automating legal documents for personal reputation management. And finally, Tyson Weiss, class of '98. Tyson's co-founder and CEO of ForeFlight, which is the market-leading provider of critically acclaimed flight software for aviation, founded in 2007 and acquired by Boeing 7 months ago. So perhaps we can find out how that's going. In addition, Tyson and I co-founded the business at Trinity in 1996. So, did want to give the panelists a bit of an understanding of the audience that they're speaking to. How many of you are former Trinity students? So alumni, great. How many of you are current Trinity students? Excellent. How many of you consider yourself an entrepreneur in some form or fashion? Excellent. I'm going to assume the rest of you guys that have not raised your hands are Trinity development folks. To meet the panelists. Also in front of you guys on the table, there are some Post-its. If you guys have questions for the panelists, please feel free to write those down and send them to me. I'd love to be able to incorporate some of your questions or things that you guys are particularly interested in into our conversation. I'd like to start with a little bit of a softball. Ask you guys how you became entrepreneurs. You want to start, Chris?
I became entrepreneurs because in Houston, the oil and gas business was kind of tight. And a gentleman who I know had started a few businesses when I was in oil and gas asked me to come help him. And he was technology, it was kind of new to me. This was 5 years into my career. So after that, I became interested in technology and entrepreneurialism, employing people and developing new ideas.
I became an entrepreneur probably because I was unemployable. Started a company right out of school, right out of Trinity, with a fellow classmate, also in the class of '89. And he was also a high school classmate of mine too. Started a company in Nashville, and since that time, I've started 2 other companies as well. As you mentioned, mainly in the healthcare IT space, so healthcare IT my entire career.
Yeah, I think I would just echo the lack of employability.
Sensing a trend.
Yeah, I think for me, it was one of those things that I always knew I wanted to do, and always exploring new ideas or businesses that I thought were interesting. And so when I found one that I wanted to pursue, I knew that that's exactly what I wanted to do.
I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, son of an immigrant who was in the restaurant business. So entrepreneurship was in my DNA. The first business was picking and selling chanterelle mushrooms to the local food distributor, which in the 80s sold for $17, $18 a pound. And then throughout high school, learned to program and was writing custom software for our business and for others. When I went to Trinity, I finally found myself in a computer science program in the 90s when technology was really ramping up and the internet was becoming a big thing. Was sort of restless, wanting to find ideas and an opportunity to pursue. And I remember hearing about this guy who had this business running out of his dorm room, and went up and visited him. It was Sheridan, and I remember looking through he had this well-organized desk of all the customer files that he was working with. And it says, so I want to be involved in this. And so that was probably how my entrepreneurship journey crystallized. And we went from wanting to be an entrepreneur to actually executing on that.
Cool. And how did your Trinity experience, for those that can remember it, how did your Trinity experience, do you feel, shaped your, either contributed to your success or perhaps shaped your goals around becoming an entrepreneur?
I'll start that by saying one of the things that you probably didn't realize at the time was made apparent to me after we started hiring lots of Trinity graduates, which is being very well-rounded, meaning can actually compose a readable paragraph or story, was something that has become apparent in hindsight. And then Trinity actually worked with me to construct really a program and a degree for myself. I was late coming to computer science, and I remember working with the Gerald Pitts at the time to really create a bespoke way for me to get a computer science degree in the remaining time that I had. So I would say very attentive, the small classroom environment, and then the sort of the small sort of petri dish we had here just created a lot of opportunity to connect and get a lot of one-on-one support.
Yeah, I mean, Trinity has, provided me personally with, an experience that, coming out, I think I had better communication skills and writing skills than some of my colleagues that I was working with. I think there's a lot of respect that comes with having a Trinity degree and legitimacy, especially here in San Antonio. Employees, folks on my executive team, investors. I mean, it's certainly in addition to just the impact it's had on myself, it's just being around really smart people and people who are interested in being cooperative and working together.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the development of critical thinking skills. I think that was an important part of my time at Trinity relative to being an entrepreneur. You're presented with problems every day, and you need to think through, how am I going to solve this problem? There's no perfect answer necessarily. So being able to work through all the different permutations and figure things out on the fly, I think is really important. And I think too, the relationships that I developed here have paid dividends downstream, year after year. So it really mattered.
I guess I would echo Jeff's point is that we came out of Trinity very well-rounded. And on an entrepreneurial team, there's nobody to do all the work. So I would be like, oh, I can write a business plan. I'm a better writer than the technology guys I was partnered with. So I wrote a business plan. And I can write a marketing plan. Wrote a marketing plan. Oh, I know how to hire people. So I came out of Trinity with good ideas about general business concepts that I think went a long ways in forwarding my entrepreneurial career.
You really get everything here. I left with a wife and a business partner who are here today.
One-stop shop. Should add that to marketing plan division. One thing I failed to mention, so Tyson is in Houston, Chris is in Houston, Jeff is in Nashville, you're here in San Antonio. And the interesting part of your story was that you had relocated to Austin, but then got incented essentially by the city to come back here. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we were in Austin, we had about 6 employees at the time, and we were growing really quickly, and I needed help, and so I would go to Geekdom to get help from a mentor over there that was a former Rackspace and he started getting more involved, he liked what we were doing, started giving me more time, and then the city had heard about it, and they ended up, telling us about initiatives that they had around wanting to build a tech district, and so they asked me, what would be helpful for your business, and for us, we're disrupting the legal industry, so we obviously had some pushback from attorneys, and to have, the 7th largest city in the country, and Bear County provides taxpayer dollars to do exactly what it is that we do. It's probably the most valuable, incentive for us. But they also gave us, along with the property developer, Gray Street. So shout out to Gray Street. They gave us free rent for 3 years and covered parking spots for all my employees. Some, press, marketing, some cash out of it. And so ultimately, it was a very attractive thing for a small company. We've since grown to 28 employees here in San Antonio. And, don't know that we would have been able to accomplish what we've done outside of San Antonio based on the specific dynamics of our business.
Cool. So in your careers, have you had a feeling of I made it, I'm there, I'm successful? And if so, can you tell us about that event? What was the thing that made you feel that way?
I would start with that. One of the harder things I've done in my career is a Series A for a startup with barely any revenue. When we first got our first round of venture capital funding, and those guys were like, "Oh, this is great business. You guys are smart enough to do it." That's when I thought, I was like, I think we can take this and do it well. So I think when I first got my first round of funding, after a year and a half of trying, I think that's when I consider myself, I can do this.
For me, the first company that we started, we grew through the 1990s, and it had a public offering. So for me, that was a milestone event. It was great. Added a few zeros here to the balance sheets, but a little short-lived because we went public right before the crash that happened in April of 2000. So, a little peak and valley. It's a good story though, because the company since that time grown to be, a company that's market cap of $750 million and 1,000 employees. So I'm still on board of that company. So it's great.
Yeah, I don't know that I made it to where I want to be in life, and certainly feel like I'm just getting started on things. But as founder of a startup, and I think everyone here would agree, we're focused on hitting milestones, and so I'm jumping from one milestone to the next milestone, and I think hitting that milestone lets you continue the path and move forward. But I think getting first round of venture financing, hitting certain revenue milestones, employee count milestones. But maybe the biggest indicator that I'm kind of headed in a good direction is, my folks just like, "Oh, you're a lawyer, go be a lawyer," and like, "What are you doing?" And so the fact that they, kind of recognize what I'm doing and they're supportive, I think that was a good sign. So.
For us, one of the things that stuck out the most was every year in aviation is a very large trade show. It switches between Las Vegas and Orlando, and I was in Las Vegas in 2013, and some private equity investors came out to to pitch a term sheet on investing in the company, and it was a 9-figure term sheet. And so at that point, we realized what we had built was very valuable in the eyes of others. Beyond that, I think once you start becoming sought out for your board positions or being part of industry groups and things like that, you realize that you got something special. And then when our company became really a fantastic place to work, that was all those things sort of blend together. We've done something special and valuable. And of course, then when you get to a certain point, you make a certain amount of money, you go, okay, well, I think that's a measure of success, but ultimately, what we've been able to create and value was certainly helpful in getting that.
So, something that I've experienced, and perhaps you guys have too, is kind of how your job changes as your business evolves. There's the startup role. There's the sort of execution phase, there's the exit phase. Can you talk me through, maybe whoever wants to go first, but how you have experienced your role changing with the evolution of your business, and perhaps which parts you like the best, or maybe you like the least, and your thoughts on that.
For us, I think there's some pretty distinct phases. One was the early days where we're just the three of us working on software. You're not really a company that's scaling at that point. That's sort of the garage shop feel. You start hiring employees, and that's another phase where things start to transition. And then I think when we got to about 50, 75 employees, you realize this is something you really have to think about differently. You're now building a company at scale. You're thinking about the vision, the values, and the culture. You're thinking about the structure of the organization, and you're trying to build a machine that can grow and scale really without you. And then once you move beyond sort of a couple hundred employees, moving international, those are all different phases where we had to build teams. We had to become competent in hiring and structuring. We had to build functional areas like HR and finance and And then as we scale internationally, building international leaders and directors, and your job as a CEO really becomes more about putting the teams in place, setting the vision, and building a management framework for that business. And each one of those has been it's growing pains, right? Transitioning from I want to write the code to they just don't want me to write code anymore.
Please don't.
And which was your favorite?
Oh gosh, I need to think about that.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my role is constantly changing. I was employee number one, and so when I first started, I was doing everything, and not a technical person, so I had to hire a software developer when I first started to help me, kind of get things going. But I think, every year we're in a different business. We have a triple-digit growth rate for the last 3 years in a row, and so next year, the company's a lot different than the company was, the year before. And my role changes. Learn how to delegate more, find the right people. Focus on the culture. You want to have something that's scalable, and so these problems or things that could have been okay when you're a small company don't scale very well. And so you need to figure out, how to take a good lead with that.
Do you have a favorite role that you've played?
I like the outreach, part. Like I like, storytelling. I like telling about our business, but I also love being on the front lines. Like I love talking to customers. They try to keep me away from doing that, but I love talking to customers. I love making sales.
Yeah, no, I think the comments here are really spot on. In a way, you're trying to work yourself out of the jobs, right? And so, as your company grows, your role is going to change, as these guys have said. And it's a challenge to try to find in yourself the ability to kind of give away certain tasks that you pride yourself on doing. So you need to hire the right people and set up the right structures. And as you grow, what used to be done in an autonomous mode by certain individuals wearing multiple hats has to change, so that you've got both departments doing functions, and there's processes and procedures and all of that. And invariably, the leader of the companies, their role is going to change too. And in terms of what I've enjoyed the most, I probably enjoy the product development side and the visioning on that. And I also enjoy selling. I think it's fun.
Actually. Yes, and echo those two. I think my favorite aspect of our job is being involved in building, seeing our team release something that ends up delighting customers and driving material change in the top line.
That's great.
And then being able to going out and selling and winning when you sell, and having folks buy into your vision and buy the thing you've created is the most satisfying. When you get to a certain point in business, you shift from offense to defense. There are more people trying to attack and take and sort of disrupt what you've built, and that's a lot more stressful and challenging than creation work.
Yeah, and so you mentioned, were you involved in an IPO, or was it just a business you started? Okay, so
Yeah,
and that's something, I think, or are you the only panelist that has done that? Okay.
Maybe so.
Is there something interesting about that you might share in terms of like how your role changed after that?
Yeah, the company grew pretty rapidly before we went out for our public offering, and it was pretty heady days, in the late 1990s, right at the beginning of 2000. And this was in the tech bubble. Companies were going public with, what's that?
I've heard of this.
Yeah. I'm old enough to experience, but a lot of companies are going public with, just formative business plans. They really didn't have companies at the time. So when the stock market, fell apart, there was a number of companies that just washed out. They depended on large amounts of funding just to survive. Luckily, our company did not. You had reserves to weather through that trough where you couldn't really get other funding. You had to actually build a business. So, when we were doing our IPO roadshow, which is where you go out and selling your stock, the NASDAQ hit its second peak right before that crash in the first week. And the second week, it's usually a 2-week span when you're out there busy selling stock. The stock market started going down every day. And so you're giving those presentations and people.
March of 2004.
And you're giving these presentations, and the person you're presenting to is really looking at their computer, trying to figure out how much money they lost during that 1 hour you spent with them. Really. And so I really feel fortunate we got that done.
Wow.
We were one of the last couple companies to go public in that bubble.
Wow.
We barely made it through. So.
And so what about your role? I know you've actually have been involved in a number of...
Yeah, all of mine have been sales to private equity or industry players generally. I've never done an IPO business.
And you've primarily played like a finance role?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, my last deal was I was CEO. I bought it and then sold it.
Okay.
So, but I sold it to a company, a foreign public company, so that was a very difficult sale process. Japanese are kind of hard to deal with as far as buying assets in the U.S., so it was very difficult. But all of it is a challenge to exit your business.
And which part would you say is your favorite? I mean, if you could just build your own job.
Selling the vision to somebody else and having them pay more than you think it's worth for it is.
You're saying that feels good.
You're the keys, right?
Somebody write that down. So something Tyson mentioned actually echoed something you and I talked about on the phone, which was Chris, which was regarding culture, and how in my experience, in startup mode at least, there's the culture is the 4 people or the 6 people or the 10 people involved in getting it going. But then as the business evolves, that culture component becomes a really critical part of the success of the startup. And what are your, this was an area that was like super, you really wanted to talk about. What are your thoughts
Backspace
on
did a good job with that, right? Was it hyper support or something like that? So it is very hard to scale a culture that begins in an entrepreneurial process. So the first couple hundred hires have to be screened very particularly about culture and how they would fit into their team, either abroad or at home, and what their function will be. And generally, when you start to scale out, each one of these marketing, accounting, will all have their own kind of culture. And so you want to put accounting people and marketing people that have developed, you want to put the right style, or if you want to change it, you might hire a leader or a director that would change the culture for the better, or what you think would be the better.
Yes, anyways.
I would say, for us, in smaller companies, developing a culture of safe risk-taking, so that you're not killing the messenger. The old saying, if you've got good news, tell me, before tomorrow. If you've got bad news, I want to hear about it before lunch. That whole thing of taking risks, but doing that in a way where you're learning as an organization. So I think that's been important for me.
Ultimately, I think for me, culture boils down to why people want to work for you, and you're not going to be successful without building a team. You're not going to build a company unless you can attract and retain people, and especially if you're in a really creative endeavor, they have to have a purpose and reason for working for you. And so it becomes very important to have some elements that people can really identify with and be inspired and motivated by, or else they're not going to work with you. And as you get out of Trinity and you get further down the road and want to hire people, they're going to be making decisions about things that really impact their lives, like leaving a stable job and coming to work for their vision. And so those things have to be they have to be pretty tangible. Right? And one of the things we did a really incredible job of is building a culture around aviation that attracted talented pilots and technologists, designers, or in other areas, and really sort of rallied around building something that impacted people's everyday lives and making a difference in the industry. And that becomes really important to retaining those folks long term. So that's why culture is important, is you need a team. You're not going to go anywhere without folks supporting what you're working on.
Yeah, for us, recognize that, especially being a much smaller company, the importance of having the right people and the toxicity of having the wrong people. And I think, as important as it is to have the right people on the team, it's also important to identify the wrong people and remove them. And so I think for us, we try to build a culture around second chances, around helping people, around our mission. So we want folks who care about that, who care about helping people, because ultimately, I think that's what drives people's desire to want to come in the morning, want to come work where we're at. We have a policy of, obviously, set out policies for each department, but one overarching policy is that if your intentions are to do good, and to do something good, if the outcome is not, what we would have wanted or something, all is forgiven. If you can just point to me, like, what were you trying to do? Like, were you trying to help somebody? What you're doing. So I think that kind of provides a guiding light for people to know that, hey, look, when I'm not there, and I can't tell you, how you should approach a particular situation. As long as your motivation is to do the right thing, I think you'll be okay.
I really like how you boiled down your vision or your mission to like that second chances idea. It's simple, but it's like really, it's a big idea.
For sure.
That's really cool.
You get to employees, you get to an environment where people aren't afraid. Right? That's something, a real personal development for me is I grew up in the son of a hard-charging German immigrant, right? Where it was probably the default nature to bark orders, right? And you really have to evolve, or I have to evolve into a state where you got an environment where people are trying to do the right thing and they're not afraid, because again, it goes back to having to work anywhere. If I'm a talented contributor, I can work anywhere. So that environment is really important.
Cool. I want to remind everybody really quick that if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write them down and pass them up to me, and I'll try to get to Rochelle.
I would like to say something. Y'all, I am 40 year, and I went to Trinity from 75 to 79, and it's just a real funny, real quick. Judy Meyer, do you remember her, Chris? She was the, what do you call her? What was her title, would you say?
Student? I don't know her.
She was the director of students during the year that I went to school. And the summer before I went to school, she had my mother and I come into her office because this is where I wanted to come to school. I wanted to study music. I wanted to come to Trinity. And she looked at my past history in high school. She said, Gay, you can never get into Trinity. I'm sorry. But she said, Gay, you have so much beautiful social skills, that I know you can get into Trinity. That's how we're going to get you in. So anyway, that's how it happened. And that's how I got into Trinity, and I graduated with a 3.34. So anyway, she was amazing. It can happen. So anyway, I'm so proud to be here, and I've listened to every one of you all, and everyone has such a unique position, depending on what your company is. And thank you very much. I just wanted to say that, from my heart, I remember Judy well, and she let me into the school without having a perfect test that we had to take.
So
Okay,
it's interesting. I'm going to riff on that a little bit. How did you guys find Trinity?
It came out on some, I took a test and you fill all this, all these questionnaires, and it was small but large institutions in Trinity. And interestingly, our college guidance counselor was pushing all the, from South Carolina, all the students in the state colleges, and so really did support looking at school. But it came up on the results of one of these scholarships surveys.
Yeah, looked at Texas schools mainly, and had good grades, and looked at what the class ahead of me, where they went, and I think 3 or 4 out of the top 10 students in our pretty big high school went to Trinity, and people that I respected and I thought were really bright, and so looked into it, came on a visit, and came out here with my dad, and we walked around campus. Just a real personal approach that they took. I mean, the dean of admissions at the time was Chris Ellerson, and Chris took a personal stake in trying to get me to come over here and talk to me. And I really appreciated that, and thought it'd be a great opportunity to be in an environment where you can be potentially bigger fish in a smaller pond.
For me, being from Tennessee, there weren't that many people from Nashville that were coming to Trinity at the time, more, since. There's 5 of us in high school that were traveling around to visit different small schools that we thought had quality education, but maybe were a little different path than some of the typical schools that folks in my high school gravitate to. So, it was a great experience just on the visit, and then looking at the academic credentials, and that's kind of it for me.
I'm coming from a Trinity family. I have 3 brothers, and 2 went to Trinity, and the 2 that went to Trinity are doctors. So I thought it'd be a good place to go.
So some of these questions that I've gotten are actually better than mine. So I'm going to deviate slightly from my plan here. This is a great one. Oh, thank you. Will you get more? Will you discuss the role and importance of mentors?
Well, I think they're critical. Absolutely, they're critical. Boards really matter, and mentors really matter. I don't think you can do it. You definitely can't build a company on your own. You have to have the right employees, but helping you look at decisions that you have to make is critical to have a resource by your side, or in the form of a mentor that you can ask and have them challenge you, and I guess constructive, safe ways. I think that's critical.
I think you'll be faced especially in a company that's successful, or raising money, or selling, or going public, you'll be faced with a number of challenges that you'll want to get outside opinions of. Even as you're developing as a leader, you're going to want to be able to reach out to people that know you and can speak frankly and provide you advice. And I worked for a guy after my MBA in 2006 who's been a mentor of mine and someone to reach out to at every major event we've had in the company's history, whether it's deciding to raise capital or working through a sale process, or even on personal leadership development sorts of things. So ideas and resources for those are really important, and you want lots of those. And if you can get that from trusted advisors, that will come in handy.
Yeah, I rely heavily on my mentors, and blessed to have a great group of people that provide me specific and relevant advice to whatever the issue is that I'm facing. Most of the time there's nothing new under the sun. These are folks who've been through what it is that I want to do, and provide really great advice. So, yeah.
At my first company, we formalized the mentor program. Every executive had a mentor that he could call and paid them for the services. And we brought the mentors together in a kind of an off-site where we explained how the business is doing and how each function needed their help in the year to come. So it worked out well. And again, you had some guy who was we called the bad phone. You could call him day or night, and it worked out well.
How important do you think it is to work for another company before starting a business versus kind of jumping into it, as it seems almost all of you are?
Well, one thing I would say is that your guarantee of success as an entrepreneur is not certain, right? And so, do you have a plan B, and do you have enough skills built up so that should something not work out, you've got got a place to fall back on. The other thing is you learn a lot by working from others. You also learn a lot by being an entrepreneur. So you might work for a company that really teaches you how to build products or scale, and you gain something valuable from that. But I would say that our times as entrepreneurs, what that allowed us to do that you won't get working for, especially large companies, is the opportunity to do everything. You know, in those larger companies, the opportunity. Yeah. So it can be valuable in the event that you need to fall back.
Yeah, I think it's important. I've always had a job. I mean, even when I was 16 years old, I was waiting tables at IHOP. I mean, it was, you know, for me, source of pride to be able to work and earn my money. And when I graduated from Trinity, I worked at Bearing Point, I worked at KPMG, you know, each for about a year. And before I decided to want to go to law school and started my business immediately after. But I think, you know, every job I learned something different. You learn how to deal with people. You learn about how a particular business operates. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you'll start to pick off those things when you're in that job. And so, yeah, I totally encourage people to go work and, you know, maybe, you know, you won't actually be an entrepreneur, and that'd be great too. It's a lot easier.
I can remember I worked in private equity for a number of years before we started Forklight, and a key skill that I developed during that period of time was negotiating. Right? And so there have been really important points in our company's history where getting a deal that was styled the way we wanted to transform the business and being more confident about how to approach those and get through them was important. One of the maxims we developed along the way was every good deal dies 3 times. And so we always use that as a way to get to the most effective result from negotiation. And so that was something that I probably would not have learned had I not been through a high volume of that in a different position.
So I've heard in my past, perhaps at Trinity, that experience is what you get when you don't get what you wanted. Can you tell us a little bit about a failure that you may have had, and maybe what you learned from that, or what the experience was for you?
I'll take this. We see early on in the existence of a formative startup, we lost a large client. We had a concentration problem. It was a hospital in the Northeast, and they were responsible for maybe 25% of our revenue, recurring revenue at the time. It was very hard to get. And I took it upon myself to go try and save it. And these guys just laid me out on the table and said, we're never using you again and all this. So I had to go back to our venture capitalist and tell them the story. And I gathered them all together on the phone. It was probably 10 o'clock at night. And they were like, it's all right. We learned a lesson now. Let's move forward. So it's really, I learned that there's no real death nail. I thought it would be the end of my business, and they'd say, give me all of my money back. But I learned from that, you know, every client is replaceable, and within 2 or 3 months, you need cover. So there's no, don't be afraid to fail, and don't be, I guess, relying on one customer, and know that they're all replaceable.
And sometimes, you know, failures are due to factors that really are, in many ways, unrelated to the core business. And so the middle business that I had, it was originally a New Zealand company that we merged into the US entity. And what you had really was you had cultural difference and you had a board mismatch. But it wasn't the underlying business that had the problem, it was those factors. So when that withered on the vine, you know, that really allowed me to spring out of that and form my current company about 10 years ago. So if the underlying business is solid, just because you might have a failure in one form doesn't mean that can't succeed elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I fail all the time. It's like a very normal, necessary, you know, thing. And I think one thing that I try to improve on is my response to failure. I'm a really competitive person. I don't like to lose, and if you know, you have to get used to losing. I mean, like when I would go pitch to investors initially, you know, just getting used to the no's, or if you're trying to make sales and you know you're getting some no's, you're getting some no's. So I think at the end of the day, you're gonna fail. Don't do the same mistake twice, and try to respond in a way that's positive.
You'll probably make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
For us, the near-death experiences have been probably some of the most formative. We've got a number of those over the years where partners or vendors have tried to kill us, some very aggressively in terms of relying on a vendor or key technology that ended up leaving us in a weak negotiating position where we had to scramble. So those are the things that the company has really learned from and figured out, or at least is mindful of, trying to build protections and to make sure that we avoid some of those. And then, some of the most, the experiences I've learned from most are personal development experiences. Having, my partners tell me when, I need to reframe the way I'm thinking or act or do differently, and those have been really helpful growth periods for me personally as a leader, especially as you scale up.
How do you stay motivated? This is not easy. You mentioned Yusuf failing all the time.
Yeah.
Which could, I can see how that would be like demotivating. How it would be very difficult to, get back at it, knowing that you're probably going to fail again.
Yeah.
How do you, do you have a technique, or do you have a mechanism for staying motivated?
Yeah, I'm very, I try to stay positive, as much as I can. I have a set routine that I'll go through to try to maintain my health and put yourself in the best position to, respond to those particular situations, but I don't. Yeah, staying positive, family, motivates me. Very close to my family. My employees motivate me. I want to make sure that I do right on them, and customers motivate me.
I think liking what you do is critical. You have to want to get up and do that every day, even when times are tough. I find sometimes the tougher times really are just a challenge that you need to solve. It's a puzzle you need to solve. So if you like solving puzzles and facing challenges and all that, there's a positive spin out of the whole thing. So, but
there's just simply puzzles that.
I find them more to be puzzles in many ways. Sometimes difficult puzzles. But also commitments that I've made to shareholders and employees. If you sell, keeps you motivated too. You got to figure it out. You got people that depend on you. So.
With 50 employees, one's having a baby or getting married or whatever, so you got to keep it going for them, right? Absolutely. These people have trusted you to keep it going, right? They quit other jobs, like you said, other professions to come work for you. So that trust keeps me going.
But also, that's a responsibility. So how do you kind of keep the positive sort of thought process on that, as opposed to like, oh my God, I have to.
I think that's an entrepreneur, right? They keep a positive spin no matter how bad it's going, generally, right? So I think that's a trait, right, of an entrepreneur.
Do you have any thoughts?
I think setting objectives and being, defining vision and setting objectives and then being satisfied in achieving those is probably is a way to at least stay focused and motivated on those and wanting to hit and deliver on those.
So as a founder, a lot of your business is you in many ways. How do you let go? Have you had experiences where it's been hard, and where somebody may approach a problem or approach a product or a portion of the job differently than you would have done it? How do you let go of the business to allow it to scale or allow it to move on?
I think patience is you have to be willing to let the person that's taking that responsibility that you've offloaded, you have to let them fail in some ways or not do things exactly right, and then hopefully listen to some constructive criticism. But I think patience is really important.
I think it's really easy to let go once you put somebody in a position where it's clear they are way better and know way more about what you're doing in that area. And then a lot of letting go is, I am afraid that if I don't retain tight control over something, that's not going to succeed, right? And for me, when you've got a great leader in a position, you realize that I don't have really much more to add here, and value-wise, in terms of that position, that person's execution of this. That's certainly a way to help let go. And in big organizations, sometimes you don't have a choice. So just those things are things you can't control anymore. So recognize those.
Yeah, I just try to remind myself that that's my job at this stage. Is I need to be able to delegate and find the right people and trust in those people. So that's something that I'm getting measured on. So I just have to do.
Mine is more about painting the picture, and when when it gets too big, you need to place a resource in it that can handle it better than you, and try and manage them or give them the old ways we used to do it. But they generally do it their own way, and you get hired an industry expert who's probably better than you at doing it, and once you figure that out, it's easier.
So something that Tyson touched on, which I think is kind of interesting, and is constantly a challenge for us at least, but and perhaps you guys too, is recruiting, is finding that right person. It has always felt like the first couple hires are super critical. What advice would you have on on those first couple hires and the mechanism for recruiting and how you find the right people?
Oh boy. I think advice that I've heard a lot and that makes a lot of sense is hire slow, fire fast. And so we try to take our time on a hire and make sure it's the right person. Have certain things that we're looking for as far as attributes that we feel are transferable to what we're doing. So you don't necessarily have to have specific relevant experience to what we're doing, as long as you have kind of these attributes. So we try to sniff those out, and then just as important to get rid of the wrong people.
Something that's helpful for us is to not talk ourselves in. We've learned over the years to not talk ourselves into a hire that we have a bad feeling about. One of the observations we've had in growing our company is there is a very clear and wide gap between the high performers and those that you should let go, basically. And there's always been, I think, in every one of the hires where someone on the team has a reservation about this person. Where it's not an emotional reservation, it's just one that they say, for some reason this person isn't going to work out. We sort of have the hell yes criteria, which is if the hire's not a hell yes, then it's a no. So that's one of the things that's really helpful along the way. And then it becomes pretty clear within 90 days or so once you've hired somebody that they may not end up on the trajectory you expected. And it's better to part. Some of the biggest reliefs we've had are letting go people who are really, really strong performers, but just didn't fit in the culture and created more trouble than their worth. And after we made those decisions, the entire team felt better about it. And you only find out just how much everybody was stressed or affected by a bad employee after you made that termination. And it's cleansing.
We have a process, something similar, which is that many people interview the person, and we make sure that 2 people out of the 7 or so that interview people are not in his function, so that they have, one of those 2 can have a veto right on the hire, and then if anybody at the round table discussing the product has any reservations, we don't hire them. So there has to be a unanimous yes, even 2 people not in their function. So we've been pretty clear about them, to kind of keep up the culture.
We do something similar to that, yeah.
How did you come up with your first idea? And was it any good?
Let's see, I was,
First idea.
first idea was I was running an internet company, a ISP back in the day, and we sold that, and the advanced technical people and I went out to dinner, and just as kind of a celebratory thing, but we started cooking up an idea for a services deal which became Alert Logic, the company that. So that was our first idea.
Was the first idea of the ISP was it good?
The first idea, yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah, first idea was really, the genesis was at school here. This was back when multimedia technologies were just coming onto the scene, and we thought there could be a business around that, and so that's what we did. That business ended up evolving, a number of times before we sold it, or I went public, I should say. But it was here at school.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean for easy expunctions or just?
I mean, for the best story that you can give everybody.
Well, I mean,
Perhaps that's that.
I think when I was in college, it's a pretty good story. I was waiting tables at this restaurant and didn't like my job and needed to buy some books and had an idea for how to make some money. And so I started a bookstore on Amazon that would sell books that I didn't have. And so what I would do is I'd make a listing for a book that felt like met certain margin criteria. Like I could find the book for cheaper and then be able to make some money on the spread. And so I would list these books that I didn't have, and then, exactly. And then when somebody would purchase, I would go buy that book and have it sent directly to them.
You're a quant.
Yeah.
High frequency trading.
So yeah, like my first couple days, I paid for my books and got some cash. And I was like, I'm gonna quit. And so I quit my job at the restaurant, and then Amazon kicked me off of it. For life. Like for life. I'm never allowed to sell anything on Amazon. I tried to sell when I went to law school, later on, and I was trying to sell some of my old books. I went on there and they were like, "You are banned for life." And I came in with a different email and everything.
Wow, they found you.
They did, yeah. So that was my first idea.
The ideas we had before Fourflight were some pretty bad ones. My friend Chris here was reminding me of one just before that, which is we tried to build a platform that let you know about where you could rent aircraft, and it was just a horrible business idea with a really smart market, not what people cared about. But some of the things that we built along the way ended up being technologies that we ended up using in early versions of the software that we built. The original business idea we had for Fourflight would have been a bad one in that we were competing with established incumbents that had really strong brands, and had the iPhone not come around, for example, those ideas would have never, I think, panned out in commercial success.
So, where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Gosh, great question. Let me think about that. That's a tricky answer.
That you can tell us within the bounds of the disclosure agreement.
Go ahead.
I think that was a pass.
Yeah, I mean, hard to say. Hopefully, still doing what I'm doing. Right now we operate in 6 states. I'd like to offer our service in all 50 states. So continuing to not only expand our geography, but product offerings. And so, in addition to a consumer-facing product, we've started to develop products for attorneys, products for nonprofit organizations who want to run more mission-oriented type background checks. So I think long-term, or at least 3 years from now, I'd like to be have our geography expanded and be able to build more customers under our other products.
For me, I think the current arc of the company, I think I'll still be in the company when I've sold it at that point. We're in a period of rapid growth, so I think that we're adding new products on, so it'll just be a bigger version of where we are today, selling additional products into the operating room, which is what we do now, and doing the same thing.
I think I would be the same way. I think we're currently scaling out of business. I'll probably still be involved with one degree or another.
Excellent.
5 years might be a different.
I
3 years.
didn't get that question. So thank you, guys. I think that's all our time. And yes, I'm being given the look. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your candor. It was a great conversation. And I did want to take a opportunity to thank David Doggett for putting the effort. But yes.
No, what?
Yes, I was going to ask you if you had anything you wanted to say.
Yeah, one more thing. So we
I
have
don't even know I had to ask you that.
You're doing great. We have a quick comment from our president, Dr. Danny Anderson.
Oh.
Dr. Anderson.
Forgive my organization.
I
here.
will not bother you.
Evidently my desktop is disorganized.
So I just want to thank everybody for being here. I especially want to thank the panel. 2 pieces of historical information just to frame this conversation. If you think back about 4 years ago, Forbes magazine did their first rankings of universities thinking about entrepreneurship. And they did it not by talking about what is being taught at the university, but looking at what is the legacy of individuals who have left the university and gone on to be successful entrepreneurs. And they divided them into large universities and small universities. And on the small university ranking, Trinity was 8th in the country. So when I listen to the stories of people who are graduates, many of you who talk about the things that you did before we had a formal entrepreneurship program, that sense of pragmatic ways that you use everything that you got out of your Trinity experience is fantastic. Keep it up, keep sharing those stories. It is wonderful for us to know. It is just great for students, seeing the pitch competitions, knowing all the kind of things that happen on campus. The second piece of historical information is much more recent. Some people may have been at events where I've talked about this, but this year there was a ranking of alumni networks. And that is not something that is done very often. There are 4,000 universities in the United States, and so they really put the emphasis on the top 50 alumni networks, and we came in at number 33. Number 33 was given to us because they talked about the way that Trinity alumni actively reach out, help each other, support each other. And I think as I listen to the way that you're here sharing stories, things that I know about relationships in this room, it is a wonderful way to think about how the entrepreneurial ecosystem out of Trinity has been a big part of that kind of a ranking. So I thank everybody in this room for being a part of that kind of a spirit. It's our 150th anniversary. A lot of great things have put us where we are today, but we've got years ahead, and I look forward to seeing the success of everyone in this room. So thank you so much for making this day happen.